The slap echoed like a gunshot across the crowded Manhattan sidewalk. Emma Cole, assistant to the most powerful woman in tech, stumbled back, her cheeks stinging as gasps rippled through the onlookers. In that frozen moment, the world seemed to shrink to the searing heat on her face and the icy stare of her boss, Victoria Steele. It was 6:47 p.m., and the golden hour bathed New York City in a deceptive glow. Emma, 27, had always been the quiet force behind Victoria's empire, a shadow who anticipated every need, from coffee orders to million-dollar deal points. Her auburn hair was cropped short, her hazel eyes sharp with a kindness that disarmed even the most ruthless boardroom sharks. But now, those eyes burned with something else: betrayal. Victoria, 29, stood tall in her tailored blazer, her jet-black hair pulled into a severe bun, her face a mask of fury and something softer. Regret, perhaps? The crowd parted like the Red Sea, phones already out, capturing the scandal that would light up X in hours. Why? Emma's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. Why did you do that? Victoria's lips parted, but no words came. She hadn't meant to lash out. Not like this. Not in front of 100 strangers outside Steel Tech's glass tower. The argument had spiraled. Emma's gentle suggestion to delay a product launch, Victoria's stress from a looming merger, and then a line crossed. Emma had mentioned Victoria's late-night texts, the ones that blurred professional and personal, the ones that hinted at something neither had dared name. You can't keep pretending, Emma had said softly, her voice trembling with courage. And Victoria, cornered by her own heart, had snapped. The slap wasn't just about the launch. It was about the truth Emma had dared to speak. Victoria was falling for her. A woman. Her assistant. The one person who saw through her polished exterior to the chaos within. Victoria Steele, the youngest CEO in Silicon Valley, who'd clawed her way up in a man's world, wasn't supposed to feel this way. Not for Emma. Not for anyone. Her life was control, precision, power. Love was a liability. Emma touched her cheek, her fingers trembling. I'm done, she said, her voice steady now, cutting through the hum of the crowd. She turned, her sneakers scuffing the pavement, and walked away. Victoria stood rooted, her hand still tingling from the impact, her heart pounding with a truth she couldn't outrun. Emma's apartment in Brooklyn was a sanctuary of mismatched furniture and warm lamplight, a stark contrast to the sterile opulence of Victoria's penthouse. She sank onto her couch, her cat, Juniper, curling against her. The sting on her cheek had faded, but the ache in her chest hadn't. She'd loved working for Victoria. Not just the job, but the woman. The late nights drafting pitches, the rare smiles Victoria let slip, the way their hands brushed when passing a tablet. Emma had known she was gay since high school, but falling for her boss? That was a mistake she couldn't afford. Her phone buzzed. A text from her older sister, Riley, saw the video on X. You okay? Emma groaned. Of course it was already online. Riley, 32, was a Navy SEAL, stationed stateside for now, her life a world of discipline and danger Emma could barely fathom. Riley's texts were rare, but when they came, they were blunt. I'm fine, Emma typed back, lying. She didn't want Riley's protective streak kicking in. Not yet. Across the city, Victoria sat alone in her office, the skyline glittering beyond her floor-to-ceiling windows. The video was everywhere, X, news sites, even her own employees' group chats. CEO slaps assistant in shocking public outburst. The headline screamed. Her PR team was in chaos, but Victoria barely heard their frantic calls. All she could see was Emma's face, the hurt in her eyes. She'd spent years building walls, against her conservative family, against the tech bros who doubted her, against her own heart. Emma had slipped through every one. She opened her phone, her thumb hovering over Emma's contact. I'm sorry, she typed, then deleted it. What could she say? That she was terrified of what she felt? That she'd slapped Emma to silence her own heart? Victoria leaned back, closing her eyes. She didn't know Emma's sister was already booking a flight to New York. Emma avoided the office for 3 days. She called in sick, her voice hoarse over the phone, and Victoria didn't push. The silence between them was louder than any argument. Emma spent her days wandering Brooklyn, her thoughts a tangle of anger and longing. She'd always been the good girl, reliable, quiet, invisible. But loving Victoria had made her bold, reckless even. She'd dared to hope, and now she was paying for it. On the third night, Riley showed up at Emma's door, her duffel bag slung over one shoulder, her buzzed hair and sharp jawline making her look every bit the soldier. "You didn't tell me it was that bad," Riley said, pulling Emma into a hug. Her voice was gruff, but her arms were steady. Emma broke, sobbing into her sister's shoulder, the story spilling out. The late-night texts, the stolen glances, the slap that shattered everything. Riley's jaw tightened. "She doesn't get to hurt you and walk away," she said, her tone low, dangerous. Emma shook her head. "It's not that simple, Ree. I love her." The words hung heavy, a confession Emma hadn't meant to make. Riley's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "Love doesn't hit Em. She's gonna answer for this." Victoria's office felt like a cage. The glass walls, once a symbol of her triumph, now reflected her unraveling. She hadn't slept in days, her mind replaying the slap, Emma's trembling voice, the way the crowd's judgment had pressed against her skin. Her team was in damage control, spinning the incident as a moment of stress, but X was merciless. Posts called her a tyrant, a hypocrite, a monster. Some defended her, citing her pressure as a female CEO, but the noise only deepened her guilt. She hadn't just hurt Emma, she'd exposed her to the world's cruelty. She scrolled through Emma's last emails, mundane updates about schedules and contracts, searching for traces of the warmth they'd shared. There was the time Emma had stayed late, ordering pizza when a deal went south, her laugh cutting through Victoria's frustration. Or the morning Emma had left a handwritten note on her desk. "You've got this." Victoria's chest ached. She'd been so careful, keeping Emma at arm's length, but every touch, every glance, had pulled her closer. And now, she'd pushed her away for good. Her assistant, her new assistant, a temp named Greg, knocked timidly. "Miss Steele, there's a Riley Cole here to see you." "No appointment." Victoria frowned. "Cole? Emma's sister?" She'd seen the name in Emma's emergency contacts, but knew little else. "Send her in," she said, straightening, her CO mask slipping into place. Riley strode in like she owned the room, her combat boots heavy on the polished floor. At 32, she was taller than Emma, her frame lean and muscular, her eyes a piercing green that seemed to see through Victoria's defenses. "You're the one who hit my sister," Riley said, no preamble, her voice low but sharp as a blade. Victoria's stomach dropped. She'd expected a lawyer, maybe a reporter, not this. "It was a mistake," she started, but Riley cut her off. "A mistake?" Riley stepped closer, her presence filling the room. "You humiliated her in front of the world. You don't get to call that a mistake." Victoria stood, her hands gripping the edge of her desk. "I know I was wrong. I'm trying to fix it." Riley's laugh was bitter. "Fix it? You think an apology erases that video? Or what it did to her?" Victoria's throat tightened. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice raw. Riley leaned in, her gaze unrelenting. "I want you to feel what she felt. And I want you to stay the hell away from her." The threat hung in the air, unspoken but clear. Victoria didn't know Riley was a Navy SEAL, trained to break stronger opponents than her. But she felt the weight of Riley's anger, and it shook her. Emma sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open to a job board. She couldn't go back to Steel Tech, not after the video, not after Victoria's silence. But the idea of leaving hurt more than she'd expected. Her life had revolved around Victoria, her ambition, her fire, her rare moments of vulnerability. Emma had seen the woman behind the CEO, the one who'd grown up in a small town, fighting her way out of a family that demanded perfection. Emma had loved her for it, even when it burned. Riley returned that evening, her expression unreadable. "I saw her," she said, tossing her jacket onto a chair. Emma's heart skipped. "What did you do?" Riley shrugged, but her eyes were stormy. "Told her to back off. She's a mess, but that's no excuse." Emma nodded, her fingers twisting in her lap. "She's not a bad person, Ree. She's just scared." "Scared?" Riley's voice rose. "She's a grown woman running a billion-dollar company. She doesn't get to be scared." Emma looked away, her chest tight. Riley didn't understand. Victoria's fear wasn't just about the slap. It was about what Emma represented, a truth Victoria had buried deep. Emma had felt it in those late-night texts, in the way Victoria's voice softened when they were alone. But love wasn't supposed to hurt like this. That night, Emma dreamed of Victoria, not the CEO, but the woman who'd once laughed with her over a spilled coffee, her guard down for a fleeting moment. She woke with tears on her pillow, her resolve wavering. Maybe she should reach out. Maybe Victoria deserved a chance to explain. But then her phone lit up with a new ex-post, a blurry photo of Riley confronting Victoria in her office, captioned, "Assistant sister goes after CEO." Emma's stomach sank. This wasn't over. Victoria couldn't shake Riley's visit. The woman's intensity had rattled her, but it was her words that cut deepest. "You humiliated her." Victoria had spent her life proving she was untouchable, but now she felt small, exposed. She opened her laptop, drafting an email to Emma, then deleted it. Words felt hollow. Instead, she pulled up Emma's personnel file, staring at the photo. Emma's shy smile, her auburn hair tucked behind one ear. Victoria's heart twisted. She'd built an empire, but she'd lost the one person who mattered. Her phone rang, her mother, Evelyn, calling from Ohio. "Victoria, what is this nonsense on the news?" Evelyn's voice was sharp, laced with the disapproval Victoria had spent her life escaping. "You're throwing away everything for some assistant?" Victoria's jaw clenched. Her family had never understood her, especially not her heart. "It's not what you think," she said, but Evelyn wasn't listening. "Fix this, or you'll lose everything." The call ended, leaving Victoria in silence. She didn't know Riley was already planning her next move, or that Emma was about to make a choice that would change everything. Emma stared at her phone, the ex-post glaring back at her. Riley confronting Victoria was now trending, the comments a mix of outrage and speculation. "This family's out for blood," one user wrote. Another, "Steal's done, her empire's crumbling." Emma's hands shook as she tossed the phone onto the couch. She'd wanted to handle this quietly, to heal in private, but the world had other plans. Her pain was now a public spectacle, and Riley's involvement only made it worse. She paced her apartment, Juniper weaving between her legs. The idea of Riley, her fiercely protective sister, storming into Victoria's office felt both comforting and terrifying. Riley had always been her shield, when kids bullied her in high school for being different, when their parents questioned her choices. But this wasn't a schoolyard fight. This was Victoria, the woman Emma loved, flaws and all. And Riley didn't know the half of it. The late-night calls, the way Victoria's voice softened when she said Emma's name, the unspoken promises neither could keep. Emma grabbed her coat. She needed air, clarity, anything to quiet the storm in her head. The Brooklyn streets were alive with autumn's chill, leaves skittering across the pavement. She walked aimlessly, her thoughts circling back to Victoria. The slap had been a shock, but it was the look in Victoria's eyes afterward, fear, shame, longing, that haunted her. Emma had spent months convincing herself her feelings were one-sided, but that moment on the sidewalk had cracked Victoria's armor. There was something there, something real. But was it worth the pain? Her phone buzzed. A voicemail from Victoria. Emma's heart raced as she pressed play, Victoria's voice filling her ear, low and unsteady. Emma, I don't know how to fix this. I was wrong, and I'm so sorry. Please, can we talk? The message ended abruptly, as if Victoria had lost her nerve. Emma stood frozen, her breath visible in the cold air. She wanted to call back, to scream, to forgive, to run. Instead, she kept walking, her heart torn between hope and hurt. Victoria sat in her penthouse, the city's lights sprawling below, like a map of her ambition. She'd sent the voicemail hours ago, but Emma hadn't responded. The silence was deafening, louder than the board meetings, the PR briefings, the endless calls from her mother. She poured a glass of wine, her hands unsteady. She'd built Steel Tech from nothing, a 29-year-old prodigy who'd outsmarted every rival. But Emma? Emma was her blind spot, the one puzzle she couldn't solve. She thought of her childhood in Ohio, the suffocating expectations of her conservative family. Her father's voice still echoed. Women don't lead. They follow. She'd proved him wrong. But at what cost? She'd buried her heart, convinced herself love was a distraction. Then Emma had walked into her life, quiet and steady, seeing her not as a CEO but as a woman. Victoria had fought it, kept it professional, until those late-night texts betrayed her. "You're more than your title," Emma had said once, her voice soft. Victoria had wanted to believe her. Now, with the world watching, Victoria felt exposed. The ex-posts were relentless, digging into her past, her family, her cold persona. Some even speculated about her and Emma, their closeness fuel for gossip. "Is Steele hiding more than a temper?" one post read. Victoria's stomach churned. She wasn't ready to face that truth, not publicly, not yet. But losing Emma felt like losing herself. Her doorbell rang, sharp and unexpected. She opened it to find Riley, her expression colder than before. "You don't listen, do you?" Riley said, stepping inside without invitation. Victoria stiffened but held her ground. "I'm not your enemy, Riley. I care about Emma." Riley's eyes narrowed. "Care? You call that caring? You're lucky I haven't dragged you through worse than X." Victoria's voice shook, but she didn't back down. "I know I hurt her. I'm trying to make it right." Riley stepped closer, her height and training making her presence overwhelming. "You don't get it. Emma's not just my sister. She's the best person I know. And you broke her." For the first time, Victoria saw the pain behind Riley's anger, the love that drove her. It mirrored her own. Emma found herself outside Steel Tech's tower, the glass facade reflecting the night sky. She hadn't planned to come here, but her feet had carried her across the city. The building was quiet, the chaos of that day long gone. She stood where it had happened, the memory of the slap sharp and vivid. But so was the memory of Victoria's hand brushing hers, the warmth of their shared silences. She didn't know if she could forgive, but she knew she couldn't walk away without trying. She texted Riley, "I'm at the office. Don't worry." Then, taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. The elevator to the 47th floor felt like an ascent into judgment. Emma's reflection stared back from the polished walls, her hazel eyes shadowed with doubt. She hadn't been back since the slap, since the world had turned her pain into a headline. Now, standing outside Victoria's office, her heart pounded with a mix of fear and resolve. The door was ajar, and she heard voices, Victoria's, sharp and strained, and Riley's, low and unyielding. Emma froze. Riley was here? Her stomach twisted. This was about to get worse. She pushed the door open, and both women turned. Victoria stood behind her desk, her face pale, her usual composure fraying. Riley, arms crossed, looked like a coiled spring, ready to strike. "Emma?" Victoria's voice broke, a mix of relief and panic. Riley's eyes softened, but her stance didn't. "What are you doing here, Em?" she asked, her tone protective but edged with frustration. "I need to talk to her," Emma said, her voice steadier than she felt. She looked at Victoria, whose dark eyes held a storm of emotions: guilt, longing, fear. Riley stepped forward. "You don't owe her anything. Let's go." But Emma shook her head.
"No, Ree.
"This is my fight." Riley's jaw tightened, but she stepped back, her silence a grudging concession. Victoria gestured to a chair, her movements hesitant. "Please, Emma. Sit." Emma stayed standing, her hands clenched. "Why did you do it?" she asked, her voice raw. "Was it because I pushed you? Because I saw you?" Victoria flinched, as if the words were another slap. She sank into her chair, her hands twisting together. "I was scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. You make me feel things I don't know how to handle." Emma's heart ached, but she held her ground. "That's not an excuse. You hurt me, Victoria." In front of everyone. Victoria's eyes glistened, and for the first time, Emma saw her without the CEO mask, vulnerable, human. "I know," Victoria said. "I've spent my life building walls, Emma. You got through them, and I panicked." Riley snorted, but Emma shot her a look, silencing her. The room felt too small, the air thick with unspoken truths. Emma took a step closer. "You can't just say sorry and expect it to fix everything. I trusted you." Victoria nodded, her throat working. "I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know, I care about you. More than I should." The confession hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Emma's breath caught. She dreamed of those words, but now they felt like a blade, cutting both ways. Across town, the X-storm was growing. The photo of Riley in Victoria's office had sparked new theories. Is the sister out for revenge? Steele's empire is imploding. Victoria's PR team was drowning, unable to keep up with the narrative. But Victoria wasn't thinking about her company. For the first time in years, her heart was louder than her ambition. She looked at Emma, standing defiant despite her pain, and felt a clarity she'd never known. She loved her, not as an assistant, not as a friend, but as the woman who'd seen her soul. Riley broke the silence. "You don't get to play the victim, Steele. You made your choice." Victoria's gaze didn't waver from Emma. "I know. And I'll spend every day making up for it if she'll let me." Emma's eyes widened, her resolve faltering. She wanted to believe her, but trust was a fragile thing, and hers was shattered. Emma turned to Riley. "I need to do this alone." Riley's face hardened, but she nodded, her love for Emma outweighing her anger. "I'll be downstairs," she said, shooting Victoria a warning look before leaving. The door closed, and the silence was deafening. Emma sat, finally, her hands trembling in her lap. "What now?" she asked, her voice small but steady. Victoria leaned forward, her voice soft but urgent. "I don't know who I am without you, Emma. Not just as my assistant, as you. I've been running from this, from us, my whole life. I'm done running." Emma's heart raced, torn between hope and fear. She wanted to reach out, to touch Victoria's hand, but the memory of the slap held her back. "I need time," she said finally. "And you need to figure out who you are, Victoria. Not for me, for you." Emma left the office, her mind a whirlwind. The city felt different now, sharper, as if her confrontation with Victoria had stripped away its illusions. She loved Victoria, but love wasn't enough, not yet. She needed to know if Victoria could change, if she could face her own heart. And Emma needed to find her own strength, outside the shadow of Steel Tech. Riley was waiting outside, her expression softer now. "You okay?" she asked. Emma nodded, though her heart was heavy. "I will be." Riley pulled her into a hug, her strength a reminder that Emma wasn't alone. But as they walked away, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. Not for her and Victoria. Not yet. Victoria stared at the empty chair where Emma had sat, her words echoing. "You need to figure out who you are." The office felt hollow, the city's hum beyond the windows a distant roar. For the first time in years, Victoria didn't care about the emails piling up, the board's demands, or the ex-posts tearing her apart. All she could see was Emma's face, the hurt she'd caused, the love she'd almost destroyed. She'd spent her life chasing power, but now, faced with losing Emma, power felt like ash. She opened her laptop, pulling up a draft she'd never sent, a letter to her family, written years ago when she'd first questioned her heart. "I'm not who you want me to be," she typed, her teenage self grappling with feelings she couldn't name. She'd never sent it, choosing instead to bury those truths under ambition. Now, she started typing again, not to her family but to herself. "I love her. I'm scared. But I'm done hiding." The words felt like a release, a crack in the walls she'd built. Her phone buzzed, a call from her COO, Mark, his voice tense. "Victoria, the board's calling an emergency meeting. The video, the sister, the rumors, it's a PR nightmare. They want answers." Victoria's jaw tightened. She'd built steel tech into a titan, but now it was a cage. "Schedule it for tomorrow," she said, her voice calm but final. She needed tonight, not for the company, but for herself. She grabbed her coat and headed to a dive bar in the East Village, a place she'd never set foot in as the polished CEO. The neon lights and sticky floors felt like another world, one where she could breathe. She ordered a whiskey, her thoughts on Emma. She'd been wrong to think she could keep her feelings locked away. Emma had seen her, really seen her, and that scared her more than any boardroom battle. But fear wasn't an excuse anymore. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through her window, juniper purring at her feet. The confrontation with Victoria had left her drained but clearer. She couldn't go back to being the invisible assistant, the one who smoothed over Victoria's edges. She needed more, for herself, for her heart. But walking away entirely felt impossible. Victoria's voicemail, her confession, had cracked something open in Emma. There was hope there, fragile but real. Riley was already up, making coffee in Emma's tiny kitchen. "You sleep okay?" she asked, her tone softer than usual. Emma nodded, sipping the too strong brew. "I don't know what to do, Ree. I love her, but I can't trust her. Not yet." Riley leaned against the counter, her eyes searching Emma's. "You don't have to decide now. But whatever you choose, I've got your back." Emma's phone lit up with a new ex-post, this one different. A statement from Steel Tech, signed by Victoria. "I made a mistake," it read. "I hurt someone I care about deeply, and I'm stepping back to reflect on my actions. Steel Tech will continue under interim leadership." Emma's breath caught. Victoria was stepping down. The comments were a mix of shock and skepticism, but Emma felt something else, pride, maybe, or hope. Victoria was trying. That afternoon, Emma met a friend, Lila, at a cafe in Williamsburg. Lila, a graphic designer with a knack for cutting through bullshit, listened as Emma poured out her heart. "She's trying, Lila. But what if it's too late?" Lila leaned forward, her braids swinging. "It's not about her, Em. It's about you. What do you want?" Emma paused, the question sinking in. She wanted Victoria, but not the version who lashed out. She wanted the woman who'd laughed with her, who'd trusted her with her dreams. Could that woman exist? Victoria spent the day in her apartment, ignoring calls from her team. She'd announced her temporary leave, a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. The board was furious, but she didn't care. For the first time, she was choosing herself over her empire. She pulled up Emma's number, typing a new message. "I'm stepping back to figure things out. Not just for you, but for me. I hope you'll give me a chance to show you who I can be." She hit send, her heart in her throat. That evening, she walked to a community center in Brooklyn, one she'd funded anonymously for years. It was a safe space for queer youth, a place she'd never dared visit herself. She sat in the back, listening to stories of struggle and hope, her heart heavy with recognition. She'd spent so long denying who she was, afraid of what it meant in her world. But Emma had changed that. Emma had made her want to be brave. As she left, her phone buzzed. A text from Emma. I got your message. I need time, but I'm listening. Victoria's eyes stung with tears. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Emma sat on her fire escape, the city's pulse thrumming below. Victoria's text glowed on her phone, a fragile bridge between them. I'm listening. She typed those words, but now they felt like a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the weight of her indecision. She loved Victoria, but love wasn't a cure for betrayal. Trust was a muscle, and hers was bruised. Riley had left that morning, her deployment looming. Before she went, she'd hugged Emma tightly, her voice gruff. You're stronger than you know, Em. Don't let her dim that. Emma clung to those words now, staring at the skyline. She'd spent so long defining herself through Victoria, her assistant, her shadow. But who was she without that role? The question gnawed at her, demanding an answer. She opened her laptop, scrolling through job listings again, but her heart wasn't in it. Instead, she found herself searching for Victoria's statement on X. The comments had shifted, some praised her accountability, others called it a PR stunt. Emma didn't care about the noise. She cared about the woman who'd written those words, the one who'd stepped back from her empire. Was it real? Could Victoria change? Her phone buzzed, a new email from Victoria, not a text this time. Emma, it began, I've spent my life running from who I am. You made me stop. I'm attending a support group tonight, facing truths I've avoided. I don't expect you to wait for me, but I need you to know I'm trying, for me and for us. Emma's throat tightened. Victoria was peeling back her armor, piece by piece. It was more than she'd expected, but was it enough? Victoria stood outside the community center, her breath visible in the chilly night. The group session had ended, but she lingered, her mind replaying the stories she'd heard. A trans teen, kicked out by their family. A non-binary artist, finding joy in their truth. Their courage humbled her, made her own fears feel small. She'd spent years hiding her attraction to women, convinced it would weaken her in a world that already doubted her strength. But tonight, she'd spoken, her voice shaking. I hurt someone I love because I was afraid of who I am. The group had listened, no judgment, only understanding. It was a start. She walked home, the city quieter now, her thoughts louder. Her mother's voice still haunted her. Fix this, or you'll lose everything. But what was everything? Her company? Her reputation? Or the chance to live honestly? To love Emma without shame? For the first time, Victoria saw a path forward, one where she could be both powerful and true. At her apartment, she found a letter slipped under her door, handwritten in Emma's neat script. I saw your email, it read. I'm not ready to forgive, but I'm proud of you. Keep going. Victoria clutched the letter, tears falling. Emma hadn't given up on her. Not yet. The next morning, Victoria met with her board. They demanded her return, citing stock prices and investor panic. She stood firm. I'm taking a leave, she said, her voice steady. Appoint Mark as interim CEO. I need to get this right. The board argued, but Victoria was done bending. She left the meeting, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Emma spent the day at a park, sketching in a notebook she hadn't touched in months. Drawing had always been her escape, a way to process the world. Today, her pencil traced Victoria's face, her sharp cheekbones, her guarded eyes. The sketch wasn't angry or idealized. It was honest, capturing the woman Emma loved, flaws and all. As she drew, she realized she was searching for herself, too. She wasn't just Victoria's assistant. She was Emma Cole, artist, sister, woman who loved fiercely and deserved better. That evening, she met Victoria at a quiet cafe, neutral ground. Victoria looked different, her hair loose, her suit replaced by a sweater. Softer somehow. Thank you for coming, Victoria said, her voice low. Emma nodded, her hands wrapped around a mug. I read your email. I saw your statement. But I need to know what's changed. Victoria leaned forward, her eyes earnest. I'm facing myself, Emma. My fears, my truth. I'm gay, and I've been running from it my whole life. You made me see that I don't have to. Emma's heart skipped, but she kept her guard up. Words are easy, Victoria. What happens when the world pushes back? Victoria's hand twitched, as if to reach for Emma's, but she stopped. I'll fight. For me. For us, if you'll let me. Emma looked into Victoria's eyes, seeing the woman she'd fallen for, the one who'd built an empire but was now building something braver, herself. I need time, Emma said, her voice steady. But I'm here. Victoria nodded, a small smile breaking through. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was hope. The cafe's warmth lingered on Emma's skin as she walked home, Victoria's words echoing in her mind. I'll fight. For us. The city felt alive, its lights a constellation of possibilities. Emma's heart was a battlefield, hope clashing with caution, love wrestling with fear. She'd seen Victoria's vulnerability, the cracks in her armor, but trust wasn't a switch she could flip. She needed proof, not promises. Still, the way Victoria had looked at her, unguarded and raw, had stirred something deep. Maybe they could rebuild. Maybe. At her apartment, Emma pulled out her sketchbook, her pencil moving with purpose. She drew herself this time, standing tall, her eyes fierce. She wasn't the quiet assistant anymore, the one who smoothed over chaos. She was Emma, whole and enough. The realization felt like a spark, igniting a strength she'd forgotten she had. She texted Victoria, I'm proud of you. Keep showing up. It was small, but it was honest. The next day, Emma visited the community center Victoria had mentioned. She wasn't sure why. Curiosity, maybe, or a need to understand the woman Victoria was becoming. The space was vibrant, filled with art and laughter, queer youth sharing stories of resilience. Emma sat in a circle, listening, her heart swelling. She spoke, too, her voice steady. I loved someone who hurt me. I'm figuring out what that means. The group nodded, their empathy a balm. Emma left feeling lighter, her path clearer. She wanted a life where love didn't come with pain. Victoria woke to a new ex-post, one she hadn't expected, a video of her at the community center, speaking about her truth. Someone had recorded her, and now the world knew. Steele comes out, the headlines read. Her phone exploded with messages, her board, her mother, reporters. Panic clawed at her, but she pushed it down. This was her truth, and she wouldn't hide anymore. She called her mother, bracing for the worst. You're throwing everything away, Evelyn snapped. Victoria's voice was calm. No, Mom. I'm finally living. She hung up, her hands shaking but her heart steady. She met Emma again, this time at a park, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot. Emma looked different, stronger, her hazel eyes bright. I saw the video, Emma said, her tone neutral. You meant it. Victoria nodded, her throat tight. I'm done hiding, Emma. I love you, and I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of you. Emma's eyes softened, but she held up a hand. I believe you're trying, but I need to be whole on my own first. Victoria's heart ached, but she understood. I'll wait, she said, as long as it takes. Emma smiled, small but real. Start by being you, Victoria. The real you. They walked together, not touching, but close, the space between them filled with possibility. Months later, Emma stood in a gallery, her sketches lining the walls. She'd quit Steel Tech, pouring her heart into her art. The room buzzed with people, her work a testament to her journey. Pain, love, resilience. Victoria was there, in the back, her presence quiet but steady. They'd been talking, rebuilding slowly, each step deliberate. Victoria had returned to Steel Tech, openly queer, her leadership stronger for it. The world had watched, judged, and moved on, but Emma and Victoria were still here, choosing each other. Riley, back from deployment, stood beside Emma, her smile proud. "You did this, Em," she said, gesturing to the gallery. Emma hugged her, grateful for her sister's fierce love. Across the room, Victoria caught her eye, her smile soft. Emma walked over, her heart full. "Thank you for being here," she said. Victoria's hand brushed hers, tentative but warm. "Always," she whispered. They weren't perfect. There were still scars, still work to do. But as Emma looked at Victoria, at the woman who'd faced her fears, she felt a quiet certainty. Love wasn't the slap, or the headlines, or the pain. It was this: two people, flawed and brave, choosing to show up again and again. And that was enough.